everyone, and welcome to On Set. I am your host, Kelly Woodson. Thank you so much for joining us here this evening, and if it is your first time, welcome as always. Now today, I am super excited to interview someone who is always my right hand behind the camera, who puts this show together, right? One of our great producers, Mr. Cliff St. Hubert. Thank you so much, Cliff, for joining us here on this side of the table. How you feeling?
I feel good. Thank you so much for having me on your show finally.
Now listen, he had to be here because he has came out with this beautiful book called The Last Prophet of Gaza. I'll read a little bit of the back. It is a powerful story of sacrifice, spiritual awakening, and the quiet revolution of compassion. The Last Prophet of Gaza is a poetic, unforgettable tale of what it means to love in a time of war. And for many of you that might know, or some of you might not know, we know that the war on Gaza is continuing to go on. Now, whichever side that you fall on in terms of this war, it's important to know that humanity must exist. We must love each other. We have to continue to care for each other. And in this story, Cliff, you depict that. But before we tap in, let's hear a little bit about you. Have you always been a writer? Like, how did this come about?
Well, actually, again, thank you so much, Kelly, for having me on this side of the camera for the first time. But yeah, I mean, I've always had a passion for writing. I kind of put it in the same bucket as drawing. I didn't see the difference growing up. It was just creating. So yeah, I've always written, but I've always been short stories. I've tried to come up with some novels, but they never really hit the right way for me, and I never got a chance to really finish them in the way that I really wanted to. But yeah, I've always been into writing since I was like 6, 7 years old, just for fun. Never to give anybody to read any of my stuff. It was always a personal thing. And then I got into writing a lot of poetry when I got into my teen years, the rebellious years, and this was around the time when HBO had the slam poetry on it. I was addicted.
My brother talks about that.
Yeah, so I would watch that a lot, and then it went from poetry back to fiction stories. Now,
in terms of not even just writing this book, but in terms of writing itself, what do you feel is something that's the hardest part? Because everybody talks about writer's block, but what do you think in your terms of being an artist, right? What do you think is the hardest part about writing?
I think the hardest part about writing is being honest with yourself, being true to what you're writing and sticking to it. When I initially came up with the story, it would have been very easy for me to write a story based on a child in Haiti and going through what's going on right now. But as a writer, I believe you have to come out of that box and do something not different, but take your experience, take what you know, and implement it in a way where you're actually creating art. And for me, this is the direction I decided to take it with.
Now, speaking of art, and when I was reading this, I said, oh, this is pure art, because a lot of people, they see what's going on and they just might kind of blaze over it. But when you read how much, for example, in your page 5, you said, the war hadn't just taken buildings, it had rearranged times. Days didn't follow nights, hope didn't follow morning, there was only surviving. And I think that a lot of people, that was one of my favorite lines in this book, because I think a lot of people think that what's going on is just, okay, you know, people are just fighting, countries are not getting along, but it really is, no matter which way you look at it, is about survival mode. So how did you capture wanting to depict so much in regards to this story? Like, what did you wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm tired of seeing what's going on, let me put it on paper? Like, what was the start of this?
Actually, it was a story that my wife saw years ago, like when we were in our dating phase, where there was 2 mothers, a Palestinian mother and an Israeli mother, and both of their children were killed. And of course, the media was trying to stoke it up to say it was their fault, it was that fault, but at the end of the day, it was a story about 2 mothers who lost their kids. And I think a lot of people forget that human element aspect of it, and it was then I really started looking into this whole Gaza, West Bank situation, and as time went on, it started rubbing me really the wrong way, because I could see the symptoms of, you know, what's going on over there happening in my own home country, the country of my blood roots in Haiti, you know, where the people in one position can easily take over another people in another position, and the people who are being taken over, They just want help and no one's listening to them. And so understanding that whole element, I had to take myself out of it because I would have made it way too personal. But if I looked at it from the lens of someone else who's going through the exact same thing, if not even worse, yeah, that's where I realized, okay, I think I'm gonna focus on Gaza. I'm gonna focus on Palestine and really learn what's going on over there. And as I started researching it, it became a point of, yeah, I think I should just write a story to hopefully resonate with a few people. I know I'm not gonna reach everybody. And as a writer, you know that you're not gonna touch every vein, you get me? But if you can get people to at least read your story, they might get something out of it that they could relate to. And yeah, that's where it all began. It all because of the special of those two moms. They got me through the doorway to really understand what's really going on over there on that side of the world.
Now, it's so touching how you say about talking about those two moms, and obviously you said, you know what, I want to really talk about this and bring this to light. And in the book, you know, one of your the main characters in the book, you discuss about how he works to put on miracles for people. You know, for example, we see within this war, within wars in general, that obviously people lose limbs. You know what I'm saying? People lose their homes. People go deaf. People go blind. And so in this, we see that the main character is performing these miracles, not realizing what he's doing. Really, he's like, oh, I'm just a person. But people are like, no, you are literally a prophet. And so, do you feel like you have a connection with like anything in regards to that, about kind of being like a superhero when things are in this nature are going on? Because I feel like he's a superhero. Do you feel like you have that connection in regards to this book?
The first books I ever read were comic books.
I figured something was going to connect. I figured.
The first books I read were comic books.
Yes.
So to this very day, I still read comic books.
Yes.
So yeah, I can see where you can find a hero element. But at the same time, I grew up religious, and not in the sense to where, you know, like most people, it's like very humble. No, I grew up dogmatically religious. I'm not sure if you understand what that means.
Explain for our viewers, and also myself. I want to hear of that too.
The Bible was literally on my side of my bed, and I had to read scripture on a regular basis, whether I wanted to or not. I went to church 3 days out of the week, Sunday to Wednesday. Saturdays, my own personal choice, I would go, and it was just, you know, just to hang out at the church. Church has been part of my life since I could remember. And the one thing that I've always taken, how could I put this without offending anybody? I believe in faith. I believe faith is very important. I believe that God is in everything and with all of us. But I have a bit of a problem with religion. You know, organized religion to me has always been a barrier to let people really know and find who God is. Instead, it's dressed up and couched in something that's unrecognizable. When you read the scriptures, when you hear what Jesus says and you see what he's done, it kind of goes against what I see church does. You know, for example, 20% of my paycheck got to go to church. I don't see why that's even a thing. And the majority of these monies that do go into churches, when someone in that congregation suffers, say, you know, 2nd or 3rd degree burns or some kind of cancer, where's the church? Where's all that money that you're supposed to use to help these people? So that always kind of rubbed me the worst way, because I always believed that if Jesus were to ever come back, because supposed to come back, right? He would show up right there in Gaza. He would not be here in America. He won't be in England or France, you know, coming no, he would be in the dirt, in the blood, getting it all thrown at him all at once and accepting it, because that's what you're supposed to do.
Now, it's interesting that you say that, because I think that faith, religion, whatever, you know, one may call it, you are right in the sense that a lot of people do not practice what they preach, or the things that we see that what God would do, a lot of people are not doing. And I think that this war has caused a lot of people to backtrack their faith, maybe not have faith in humanity because of the things that they're seeing. I mean, we have TikTok, we have Instagram, we have Facebook. We live in such a simultaneous, just very fast world where we literally can see this. What do you say to someone that is losing their hope in humanity or losing even that faith aspect? Because it's hard. It's hard to keep up when you read something like this that's actually happening, or when you see it on TV to anyone. Like, what do you say in regards to that, especially writing a book like this?
I would tell them to literally just look within yourself, because if you're looking for God, you don't need to go to a building to find God. You just look right in the mirror, look right into your own eyes. You'd be surprised what you feel inside you. I always ask people, when you hear that voice in your head, what does it sound like? Does it sound like you, or does it sound like someone else? Right? I also say, when you hear that voice, how'd you hear it? Because it's not like it has ears. When you picture things in your mind, how do you see it? Like, what do you visualize? And where does it come from? We all share that. We all have this thing where we can communicate with the source, with the energy, with the universe. Call God whatever you want. At the end of the day, it's always there. And it doesn't care how you feel about it or anything else, because it's purely love. It literally, quite literally, is love. And this is why I made a point in the story, to make people understand that love is not easy. Love is not soft. It could be very hard, very brutal at times, because in love there's truth. And as you well know, truth can hurt sometimes. And in the book, I want people to walk away knowing, despite how bad things could be, nothing could be worse than clearly what these kids are going through. But no matter how bad things could be, love is always going to literally help you get through it. It'll literally, you can move your way into another reality where whatever bad is going on over here, it's not going to affect you there. Despite, it's like they say, just because you live in the hood don't mean you're poor. Don't mean you have to be poor.
Well, that's a bar right there. After this commercial break, we'll talk a little bit about your process emotionally within the book, because as a writer, that is one part of being it. So we'll be back after this commercial break. Hello everyone, and welcome back to On Set. Thank you for joining us after that commercial break. We are here with Mr. Cliff St. Hubert, who is usually behind the cameras. We got him here today because he is the author of this amazing book, The Last Prophet of Gaza, discussing exactly the things that are going on right now when it comes to the war in Gaza. And so, Cliff, you had talked about, why this book is so important, to understand that love is a big factor in what we are missing in this world. But the one thing that I want to talk to you about, because I feel like as writers or journalists, we take on these stories and we are supposed to put a bare face. We're supposed to put a very strong face. And on page 29 here, you said, word of his miracles continued to spread. But Issa's heart grew heavier and heavier. For every healing, another child was killed. For every hand he touched, a missile struck a school. For every mother he healed, a hospital was bombed. He began to question, was he saving people or delaying their death? How do you write something like that so heavy and still be able to show up to work the next day? What do you give advice to these writers, these journalists who are going out here with these hard stories to continue to keep going when things like this are tough to write?
You just have to. There's no if and buts about it. You have to walk the walk. If you call yourself a journalist, which I think is probably one of the most dangerous jobs on earth, next to the physical jobs of maintaining your city. This is a choice that you're literally walking into a war zone just to report a story. That's nothing to scoff at. And the people who actually do these things are literally selfless. They're not thinking about whether I'm going to live or die tomorrow. All they're thinking about is those people over there, their story is not being told. That mom over there, her story is not being told. I have the resources and the ability to do that. I can tell her story. Now, if I don't, who's the real villain? Is it the people dropping the bombs or the one who's watching and doing nothing? So yeah, you might risk going into that war zone and bullets will fly because you're there. That shouldn't keep you from going. That didn't keep the aid workers that came into Gaza with food, who were murdered and then buried with the whole van in the ground. They didn't keep them from not going in, or the other ones that came in after. You see what I mean? Again, love is brutal, and when you love hard, you're willing to take a bullet.
Now, you discuss how there are consequences when you want to be able to help people. And some people reading this book might not agree with everything that you're saying. They might say what you're saying is incorrect. They might say what you're saying is a lie, that this is just made up. This is just... What do you say in regards to that? Because I think that's the hardest part about being a writer, an actor, whatever, is that people are going to come for your throats when you're telling stories that there's two sides to them, right? There's two sides to look. So what do you say in regards to that?
First of all, I want to be very clear. This is a fictional story. Issa is not a real character. He's not a real person. He's a representation of the 15-year-olds in Gaza. He is not a real person. And so going into stories like this, go into it knowing that you want to be entertained. Because that's the whole purpose of watching film, watching documentaries, reading a good novel. You go in to be entertained. Now, in that entertainment, you hope to be educated in some form or fashion, where you could walk away from a fictional story and say, that relates. I see where he was coming from with that. I know where he got that from because I experienced it. Yeah, the story is a fictional story, but the reality of the story doesn't make it less important. Does that make sense?
It does. No, it completely does, because you're telling, like you said, a representation of what is occurring, you know. And I think the problem with, in terms of when you look at this story, is that this situation is such a deep one. This situation, I mean, this is a century situation issue.
Actually, it's much older than that. It's much older than that.
Deep.
It's very deep.
Yes.
And we have to be, it's like the hubris to think that we can go in and do something to change the situation overnight is preposterous. But what I do believe is one thing that has always changed time has been music, art, family. Once these components come into food, once you have all these components into a society, it's very hard to look for someone to fight. I don't know anyone who's gone to a Beyonce concert looking for a fight. You get what I'm saying? You are eating, you are dancing, you are enjoying music, you're enjoying art, you're enjoying life. When life comes in and does life things, you lock in. And right now, life on the other side of the planet there's none of that. There is no music, there's no art, there's no food, there's no family, but there is love. Yeah. There is love, hence the reason why you see them still standing in the rubble. Just like our own people, hence the reason why we still go out in the street and protest, knowing there's it's not even a 10%, 90% chance that you won't get shot. It's a 50-50 chance you walk out that door, you will get shot. But the love you have for your family, the love you have for your quartier, your neighborhood, yes, the love that you have for your country, you cannot not go out there, because then you'll be betraying the person you see in the mirror. When you look at yourself in your eyes in the mirror, you will be highly disappointed in yourself. And it's like, as you well know, it's always better to live on your feet than die on your knees. And if you're gonna die for something that you're willing to die for, something that you know you're willing to live for.
It's very important that you mention that, because I think a lot of times when people come to the U.S., for example, they have so much pride, obviously, from where they came from, but sometimes they don't have pride. Sometimes they forget about exactly where they came from and want to ignore. And I think that you bring into this story a great representation of not ignoring what's happening, especially in front of you, and understanding at what cause you're at. And I will say it to my viewers, because at the end of the day, no matter which side you fall on, it's important to understand, like what Cliff had said, that love is the most important, because we got to this point because there's no love. We got to this point because, you know, we're going into this battle. Now, the one thing that I noticed in the beginning of the book, you dedicated it to your 2 kids.
Yes.
I was like, oh, now I'm gonna hear it. Because anytime people talk about, you know, I'm like, I love that. Tell me why you picked to dedicate it to your 2 kids.
Because they are the ones who actually give me the light to do what I do. Like, they have that light. It's so pure. It's so innocent. It's so real that when I look in their eyes, I can see the love, like a physical thing. It's not an imagination. Like, I can ask you love me? And you'd be like, yeah, I love you. Yeah. But it's not the same. It's not the same. Not with your own. Not with your own. So yeah, they're the ones who basically help me get what I do. Everything I do, they give me that energy. Are they, I would say, like, aware of exactly what's happening, like in terms of like a lot of things that you described? My oldest, yes. Okay. He's more aware of what's going on, but he knows how bad it is. He's just happy he's not there. You know, because he knows where he is. He knows the privilege he lives in. He knows that he has some place where he can, you know, get a meal easily, you know, fresh water very easily, a bath on a daily basis. Takes for granted. And so, yeah, he's very fortunate about it, and he knows what's going on over there and is very grateful that he's not there. He sees what happened over there. Plus, on top of that, it doesn't help that he has a dad who works in media and is constantly bombarding, you know, everybody. Did you see what happened over here? Did you see what? Yeah, they keep me focused. Now, what is your message to those who might be hesitant to read this book because they feel as though maybe it's going to hurt them emotionally, or they don't want to see it, they don't want to hear it? We talked a lot about you wanting to make sure that people know to fight for what they believe in, but a lot of people, they're still so hesitant to pick up material regarding anything that has to do with wars and battles and trials and tribulations. What do you say to your possible future readers? The real reality is, I named the book like that on purpose, and I made it short like that on purpose because I really wanted people to read about what's happening over there. Just saying Gaza nowadays, it's almost being anti-Semitic, and it's not. Recognizing Gaza is almost being anti-Semitic, and it's not. Saying that you feel for the people over there and you hope the best for them is almost anti-Semitic. You get what I'm saying? So if you're going to go into that book, take that out of your mind first and foremost. It's not an anti-Semitic book. I don't abuse, bash, or curse Israelis at all. But that is one thing I noticed. You did not mention really much of the nation of Israel. There's no need. Much? There is absolutely no need. It's like if I say Iron Mike is coming to fight tonight, do you care who he's fighting? You know he's coming in to knock someone out. And I'm not talking about Iron Mike Jones or Iron Mike Jeffrey. You know I'm talking about Tyson. So when you see a book, the Last Prophet of Gaza, you know I'm talking about the West Bank and Israel. I don't need to say it. So with that, all I can say is just go in with an open mind and realize this is a fictional story. And if it touches you in a way where you feel like you should do something, do it the right way. Don't be that outlier that does something to shame yourself, your family, or the cause you're fighting for, because then what's the point? Do it, stand up and say what you want to say, but make sure you say it with your chest and do it with honor. Did you have a moment when you were writing this, because of how heated this conversation is and this topic is very, very, very difficult? Did you have a moment where you're like, I'm not going to put this out? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. This story has been brewing in my head since COVID, actually. I know, if you don't recall COVID, this was when everyone was literally locked up in their houses like prisoners. Yes. So I had a lot of time to think. Right. You know, and this story, amongst a few others, were rattling around in my head. Not so fleshed out. This didn't become really fleshed out. The prophet didn't become really fleshed out until things got so bad in Gaza, where it was literally in your face. The babies dying in Gaza, little kids. What really tore me apart, and it got me back to writing this story to finish it, a school was bombed in Gaza at night where a whole bunch of little children were staying, and the place was destroyed in utter flames. Every kid died except for this one little 5-year-old girl. And the clip I saw of her walking through the building with the fire all around her, it made me think, okay, that's why I kind of had to write in the book where Issa was walking like a walking question mark, because that's what she looked like to me. It's just like a walking question mark. And she came out, she sat down, and if you look in her eyes, you can tell she is traumatized. That's when I was like, okay, I got to finish my prophet story. And once I started writing, it took me about 2 weeks.
I will say it to anybody. I remember being in college, and we would be in organizations and groups for, marginalized communities, and just talking about difficult conversations. And boy, this topic, this is the one. This is the one that I think. There's no black and white. It is simply the fact of we need to sit down. We need to talk about what's happening. We need to encourage each other to, like you said, shed that light, shed that love, because there has to be an end to the madness.
It's untenable.
Right. And then that's the difficult part, because like we said, for centuries this has been going on. But I have hope. I have faith. You've brought a lot of hope in your story that we will one day see a light for both nations, right? And to know that love is important.
Love is the key. Love is the key. Love is the key. I mean, it's a jagged, brutal blade of a key, but once it's in that lock, it opens up so much.
Where can our viewers find your book?
Very easily. You can find my book on Amazon. Just go to Amazon. There's no book on the market called The Last Prophet of Gaza. So that it's going to be very easy to find.
Hey, listen, easier, that's the better. Well, Mr. Cliff, thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Again, the author of The Last Prophet of Gaza, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here and being able to talk to us about this topic. And everybody, please educate yourselves, stay safe, love one another, and we will see you next time on Set with Kelly.